Hi, I'm Bonnie Barker with watch.bonniebaycrochet.com, and today we're going to make the Easy Ripple Baby Blanket. This is a stitch pattern that I learned many years ago, back in the 1970s, back when these kits were very popular, and I made several of them as a teenager. And I thought it would be really fun to revisit this, and it would be a great stitch for those of you who are beginners and would like to learn how to make the traditional ripple stitch. And I went ahead and made a smaller version of this. This one is approximately 25 inches wide by 26 inches. If you want to make it wider and longer, it's very easy to do. For width, all you need to do is add 16 chains for each additional chevron you would like to add. And for width, you just keep crocheting until you reach the desired length. Well, let me go ahead and show you what you're gonna need. Oh, one more thing. This is a great stash buster project. I actually hit my stash for this particular project. So the yarn that I use may not be available any longer in your area, but do feel free to use whatever yarn you have. And if you have thicker yarn, just upsize the hook to match your yarn. And just really enjoy making this a great stash buster. For this project, I'm actually going to be using some yarn in my stash that has been discontinued. But let me just explain. This is going to be, or can be, a very excellent stash buster for yarn that you have just wondered what to do with. But let me go ahead and give you some details as to what I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using 2 of each of these colors. Each of these scans has approximately 265 yards. The total yardage that I have available for this project is approximately 1,060 yards, and I'll tell you at the end how much I actually used. Please note that the yarn that I'm using is a number 3 or a light or a DK weight yarn. Now, if you don't have a DK weight yarn available and you have a number 4, which is a worsted or Aran weight yarn, that's perfectly fine. Whatever you have, you know, at least 1,000 yards of should be fine. And as far as stash busting goes, if you have a lot of different colors of the same thickness of yarn, that will also work quite well, as you will see as this pattern is explained. To go along with my DK weight yarn, I'm going to be using a size H or 8 or 5.00 millimeter crochet hook. Now, if you're going to use a number 4 or an Aran weight yarn, feel free to bump up the size of the hook to match the yarn so that it yields the fabric that you enjoy. And I also recommend that you have a yarn needle and a pair of sharp scissors handy. To begin, we will start with a slip knot, and we are going to chain 130. In order to help with such a large number of chains, one thing you can do is every time you get to a designated number, and I'm going to designate the number 25, I'm just going to put a little stitch marker so that I don't lose count, or if I do lose count, then I don't have to undo the entire chain. I can go back to where the stitch marker was and know that that's at least 25 chains there. Let me also mention, because many people often ask me, what is the multiple of this particular stitch? Well, for this stitch, using the ripple, using the single crochet, this, and the way I am using it in the particular multiple, it is a multiple of 16 plus 2 stitches. So any multiple of 16 plus 2 should work for this pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and continue getting my 130 chains completed. So we're ready to begin. We are going to single crochet in the second chain from the hook. We're going to work 2 single crochets in that space, just like so. And if you need stitch support, please look in the video description below if you need to learn specifics on working the single crochet. Okay, now for the next 7 chains, we're just going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 7 stitches. And that's 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And yes, there's going to be a lot of counting in this particular project. We're going to skip one chain, and then in the next chain, we're going to work a single crochet in that chain and in the next 6. So we're going to count to 7 total again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 again. And in the next chain, we're going to work 3 single crochets in one place, and this is going to make for the peak of the chevron. So 3 in that, and let me just show you what we have so far. Okay, so now we're going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 7 chains again. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I'm going to go ahead and remove the stitch marker. This was just helping me to count my foundation chain. So after we work those 7 stitches, we're going to skip 1 chain and then work 7 stitches again. And this is going to be the repeat all the way across. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That one got away from me. Let's try that one again. 6 and 7. Let's do a double count on that just to make sure. Okay, we have our skipped stitch right there. 1, 2, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just wanted to make sure. And then we work 3 single crochets in the next chain. And we're going to repeat this all the way across the row. Again, you should just count 7. Like going forward, we're going to work 1 single crochet in the next 7 stitches, skip 1 stitch, and then work 7 more single crochets, and then 3 in the next. So go ahead and work that across, and I will show you how this ends. After having worked all the way across, we did have to skip a stitch, a chain here, and then we've crocheted the next 7. You should have 1 chain left. We're going to work 2 single crochets in that last chain. And this might be a really good time to make sure that the chain kind of goes down and then up, down, down, then up. Just verify that you have done that much correctly all the way across. You should have a total of 8 chevrons begun. Okay, now for row number 2, we're going to chain 1, and I've gone ahead and turned already. After that, we're going to be working only in the back loops for the rest of this pattern. Normally you would go through both of the loops, but what gives this ridge-like pattern its look is by working only in the back loop as you work each row. So for the first stitch, we're going to work 2 single crochets in that first space. And now we're going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 7 stitches, again working only in the back. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. After working those 7 stitches, we're going to skip 2, 1, 2, and then we're going to work 7 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now the next stitch, we're going to work 3 in the same loop. 1, 2, 3. Now just to be sure that your count is accurate, this should have been the middle stitch, or the middle of the 3 stitches from the last row at the peak of the chevron. And then we're going to work 1 stitch in each of the next 7 stitches. Again, only working in that back loop. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then we're going to single crochet in each of the next 7 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that 7th stitch should be the first of that 3-stitch grouping from the last row. And then again, 3 single crochets in the next stitch, and that should be at the top of that chevron. So let's take a look at what we would have so far. Okay, so we're going to work that all the way across the row. So we work this all the way across until you have 1 loop left, or 1 stitch left, and in that back loop of that last stitch we work 2 single crochets. So let's pause and take a look at what we have. Okay, so this is the way it should be looking. Now for row number 3, and for the remainder of the rows, it's simply a repeat of row number 2, what we've already done. It's that easy. Okay, so working in the back loop, we're going to work 2 single crochets in that first stitch. And now we're going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 7. Again, all worked in the back loop. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And we're going to skip 2, 1, 2, and then starting in that next stitch, 7 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And you guessed it, 3 single crochets in the top. And that's going to be what we repeat all the way across. We're going to work 7 single crochets, skip 2, which will be in the valley of these chevrons, 7 more, all worked in the back loops, and then 3 in the top. So go ahead and continue that all the way across, and this will be row 3. And at the end of row 3, which ends the same way as row number 2, continue on for as long as you would like this particular color. I am going to work 8 rows of this color before switching to the multicolored yarn. Now, if you are working a scrap GAN, so to speak, and you only want to do a 2 or 3 or 4, I would encourage you to stick with an even number of rows so that you have more of a uniform look to this. So if you want more smaller stripes, you can change your yarn more frequently. But I'm going to go ahead and complete 8 rows, and then I will show you how to add in the new yarn color. I've got 1 stitch left to complete the 8 rows, and let me go ahead and work the last stitch, but only to this point. I'm not going to put the yarn over to complete the stitch. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the color change, or the yarn that I'm going to use for the next 8 rows, and pull that in just like this. Now it is a little bit loose, and let me show you how to fix that. I'm going to go ahead and take my scissors, and I'm going to trim the solid color that I've just been using, and I am going to gently bring these 2 together, and I'm going to tie a gentle knot right here just so that the strands don't go anywhere. Okay, and we'll deal with those a little bit later on in our project. Okay, so now I'm going to chain 1, turn, and we're going to begin our next row. But let's go ahead. I want to show you the texture of this. Isn't that beautiful?
by working in the back loop, you really can create a quite lovely texture. So I'm going to go ahead and starting now, just the way we've been working the other rows, we're going to work 2 single crochets in that first stitch, and then we're going to follow that. I'll just work this one more time for you. 1 single crochet in each of the next 7 stitches. After that, we skip those 2 stitches. They're right in the valley, 1, 2, and then we work 7 more, 1 in each of the next 7 stitches. That's 5, 6, and 7, and then 3 stitches in that top. 1, 2, let's pull that out of there, and 3. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. That's going to be a nice contrasting yarn too. Now, if you don't have a variegated yarn like this, if you just have yarn from your stash that you need to use up, and you don't even have to do 8 rows of each color like I'm doing, you can just make do with what you have and have quite a beautiful blanket. Okay, so go ahead and work this for the next 8 rows. Okay, I've completed 8 additional rows with a variegated color, and I am about to change the yarn color again, so let me go ahead and do that last stitch and then bring in the solid pink color just like that. And now I'm going to go ahead and secure this yarn. So I want to trim the variegated color right here. And I'm going to go ahead and tie this with the solid color. You may not have to do this depending on the yarn that you use, but since the yarn I'm using is very slippery in nature, I just want to make sure that these stitches do not go away on me in any way, shape, or form. Okay. So now I have my yarn secured. I'm going to go ahead and turn and just begin repeating another row. Okay, I'll start off this row again, 2 single crochets, and then I'm just going to continue on with 1 single crochet in the next 7 stitches, just like we've been doing. So you know how that works now, so let me go ahead and give you an assignment. As far as the repeats go, remember I said that there were 8 rows of the solid and then 8 rows of the variegated. Of course, you can do however many rows that you want, but this is what I'm going to be doing from this point on. I'm going to repeat this 16 row for first 8 with the solid and then 8 with the variegated. I'm going to repeat these 16 rows a total of 4 times more. And then I'm going to repeat these 8 rows of the solid color once more. Well, I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and then I'll show you the finishing touches. At the end of the last row, I'm going to end with a chain and a tug, and we're going to cut a generous strand. Now we do have a lot of these strands to hide. And let me show you a quick and easy way to do this. You can't do this with all colors, but since I'm using a variegated color, I'm going to hide these 2 strands together by threading both of them into my yarn needle. You can see now why it's helpful to have a longer strand so that you can actually do this. And let's see. I'm going to run this under the variegated stitches just like this. It's a little bit tricky, but it's worthwhile to take the time to do this. Okay. Might be a little tough getting that needle head through. There we go. So I'm pulling on these gently and pulling them through, and you can see the knot is already hidden pretty well. And I'm going to continue under the next few strands here. And the nice thing about hiding it under this color changing yarn is that it already, it just blends in so well. Okay, I'm going to run that under a few more stitches, just like this. And I'm going to pull back on it a little bit, and this is the important part. You want to make sure you have a good sharp pair of scissors, and you want to cut the strands, but you don't want to cut your stitches. That's very important. Okay, so that strand is effectually hidden, and I've actually hidden the one next to it in the same way. It's starting to come out a little bit. There it goes. So we're going to need to hide all of these places where you joined in the yarn. So go ahead and hide those. Now, if you're using two solid different colored yarns, you may want to hide, one strand under the colored, colored yarn that matches the strand. For example, if you're using black and white, you're going to obviously want the white under the white and the black under the black, so that the the difference in contrast doesn't bleed through. So go ahead and hide those, and I'll show you what I have.
Well, I hope you enjoyed making the Easy Ripple baby blanket with me today. If you're watching me on my YouTube channel, please hit subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the thumbs up if you like this project. And if there are other projects that you would like to see, please let me know in the comment section below. I do take these comments seriously and respond as quickly and as often as I can. God bless. Bye-bye.